platform, and they have to accept whatever terms they are offered. The exceptional profitability of these companies is largely a function of their avoiding responsibility for and avoid paying for the content of their platforms. They claim that they are merely distributing information, but the fact that they are near monopoly distributors make them into public utilities and should subject them to more stringent regulations aimed at preserving competition, innovation, and fair and open universal access. The business model of social media companies is based on advertising. Their true customers are the advertisers. But gradually, a new business model is emerging based not only on advertising, but on selling products and services directly to users. They exploit the data they control, bundle the services they offer, and use discriminatory pricing to keep for themselves most of the benefits that otherwise they would have to share with consumers. This enhances their profitability, but even further. But the bundling of services and discriminatory pricing undermine the efficiency of the market economy. Social media companies deceive their users by manipulating their attention and directing it towards their own commercial purposes. They deliberately engineer addiction to the services they provide. This can be very harmful, particularly for adolescents. There is a similarity between internet platforms and gambling companies. Casinos have developed techniques to hook gamblers to the point where they gamble away all their money, even money they don't have. Something very harmful and maybe irreversible is happening to human attention in our digital age. Not just distraction and addiction. Social media companies are inducing people to give up their autonomy. The power to shape people's attention is increasingly concentrated in the hands of a few companies. It takes a real effort to assert and defend what John Stuart Mill called the freedom of mind. There is a possibility that once lost, people who grow up in the digital age will have difficulty in regaining it. This may have far-reaching political consequences. People without the freedom of mind can be easily manipulated. This danger doesn't loom only in the future. It's already played an important role in the 2018 US presidential elections. But there is an even more alarming prospect on the horizon. There could be an alliance between authoritarian states and these large, data-rich IT monopolies that would bring together nascent systems of corporate surveillance with an already developed system of state-sponsored surveillance. They may even result in a web of totalitarian control, the likes of which not even Aldous Huxley or George Orwell could have imagined. The countries in which such unholy marriages are likely to occur first are in Russia and China. The Chinese IT companies in particular are fully equal to the American ones. They also enjoy the full support and protection of the Xi Jinping regime. The government of China is strong enough to protect its national champions, at least within its borders. US-based IT monopolies are already tempted to compromise themselves in order to gain entrance to this vast and fast-growing market. The dictatorial leaders in these countries may be only too happy to collaborate with them, since they want to improve their own methods of control over their own populations and expand their power and influence in the United States and the rest of the world. The owners of the platform giants consider themselves the masters of the universe, but in fact they are slaves to preserving their dominant position. It's only a matter of time before the global dominance of the US IT monopolies is broken. Davos is a good place to announce that their days are numbered. Regulation and taxation will be their undoing, and EU Competition Commissioner Vestager will be their nemesis. There is a growing recognition of a connection between the dominance of the platform monopolies and the rising level of inequality. The concentration of share ownership in the hands of private individuals plays some role, but the peculiar position occupied by the IT giants is even more important. They have achieved monopoly power, but at the same time, they are also competing against each other. They are big enough to swallow startups that could become into competitors, but only the giants have the resources to invade each other's territory. They are poised to dominate the new growth areas that artificial intelligence is opening up, like driverless cars. The impact of innovations on unemployment depends on government policies. The European Union, and particularly the Nordic countries, are far more far-sighted in their social policies than the United States. They protect the workers, not the jobs. They are willing to pay for retraining or retiring displaced workers. This gives workers of the Nordic countries a greater sense of security that makes them more supportive of technological innovations than workers in the United States. The internet monopolies have neither the will nor the inclination to protect society against the consequences of their actions. That turns them into a menace, and it falls to the regulatory authorities to protect society against them. In the United States, the regulators are not strong enough to stand up their political influence. The European Union is better situated because it doesn't have any platform giants of its own. The EU uses a different definition of monopoly power from the United States. US law enforcement focuses primarily on monopolies created by acquisitions, whereas EU law protects the abuse of monopoly power irrespective of how it is achieved. Europe has much stronger privacy and data protection laws than America. Moreover, US law has adopted a strange doctrine. It measures harm as an increase in the price paid by consumers for services rendered. And that's almost impossible to prove when most services are provided for free. This leaves out of consideration the valuable data that platform companies collect from their users. Commissioner Vestager is the champion of the European approach. It took the EU 7 years to build a case against Google, but as a result of her success, the process has been greatly accelerated. Due to her proselytizing, the European approach has begun to affect attitudes in the United States as well. I have mentioned several of the most pressing and important problems confronting us today. In conclusion, let me point out that we are living in a revolutionary period. All our established institutions are in a state of flux, and in these circumstances, both fallibility and reflexivity are operating at full force. I lived through similar conditions in my life, most recently some 30 years ago. That's when I set up my network of foundations in the former Soviet Empire. The main difference between the two periods is that 30 years ago, the dominant creed was international governance and cooperation. The European Union was the rising power, and the Soviet Union the declining one. Today, however, the motivating force is nationalism. Russia is resurgent, and the European Union is in danger of abandoning its values. As you will recall, the previous experience didn't turn out well for the Soviet Union. The Soviet Empire collapsed, and Russia has become a mafia state that has adopted a nationalist ideology. My foundations did quite well. The more advanced members of the Soviet Empire joined the European Union. Now our aim is to help save the European Union in order to radically reinvent it. The EU used to enjoy the enthusiastic support of the people of my generation, but all that changed after the financial crisis of 2008. The EU lost its way because it was governed by outdated treaties and a mistaken belief in austerity policies. What has been a voluntary association of equal states was converted